Here we are with another team selection video, this time ahead of Game Week 4 in FPL. I'll be talking about how I did in Game Week 3 and my transfer plans. I am in two minds about using 2 free transfers or possibly taking a -4 hit this week and being very aggressive. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below and all your individual situations. If you end up enjoying this video, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, share this video around with those that love FPL and UCL Fantasy. There's going to be more UCL Fantasy content headed your way, and the first draft video is already out on the channel. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I have Turner and Onana, and in this matchup, it was Turner getting a 3-pointer, and Onana got 0 overall. He conceded twice in 4 minutes as Nottingham Forest took a 2-0 lead, and Onana also got booked towards the end of the game, and with Turner making even more saves, it was a points difference of 3, and I got the goalkeeper decision wrong in terms of points, but I don't really question the logic because I did back United for the clean sheet. I thought they would win 2-0, and they ended up coming back, which was obviously fairly impressive, but their defence leaves a lot to be desired, and Onana's expected goals conceded figure is 5.31, and that is absolutely terrible, of course. Let me not sugarcoat it at all. And if you compare it to Man City, for example, they rarely concede chances, and their XGC is one of the best in the league. But Onana is still a solid choice because of the saves and bonus points, but Man United need to toughen up defensively, otherwise Onana could be on the chopping block. We could also level this criticism to Arsenal, and Arsenal will be facing Man United, of course, this weekend in that huge clash. And Arsenal have just been so disappointing from a defensive perspective. They actually don't have bad expected goals conceded numbers. They are dominating most games, but their issue is they gift goals to the opposition, and this game against Fulham was no exception. Inside 1 minute, Bukayo Saka does a back pass, a horrendous one, which puts Andreas Pereira through, and Aaron Ramsdale just can't stay firm, and it would have been an easy save if he got his footwork right. In the end, though, Arsenal also gifted a goal towards the very end of the game as João Palhinha was left unmarked from a corner, despite Arsenal having the man advantage. But Saliba is still a decent FPL asset. He produced returns in the first 2 game weeks, an assist for Saka in Game Week 1, and getting a clean sheet and a top performance against Crystal Palace. But I think Saliba and Gabriel is the best centre-back partnership Arsenal have to offer, and Saliba is much better and more composed when he's got the Brazilian next to him, and surely it's a matter of time until Arteta rectifies things, puts Partey back into the midfield, White as the right back so he can combine with Saka, and you have that partnership of Gabriel and Saliba. And if that happens, I would have much more confidence in Arsenal. When they fielded their best 11 last season, they won every single one of their matches, which includes Zinchenko as the left back, Gabriel Jesus up front, and then everyone else you would expect in their respective positions. But I'm still very concerned about Arsenal defensively, and with those fixtures coming up, even Everton away and Bournemouth away, I only see 1 clean sheet possibly over the next 5 game weeks. Then we go to Ben Chilwell, and he produced a 6-pointer. A bit disappointing when you've got Gusto producing 14 points overall, but Chilwell has been ticking along nicely. Very good performances overall, and I don't know why he didn't shoot when he had that solo run and ended up trying to pass it to Sterling. Maybe he had Sterling in his FPL team, who knows, but it was a very disappointing affair. It really could have been a double-digit return, but still, at least to produce something, unlike Estupinian and the rest of my backline, as he produced a 1-pointer, and West Ham run riot in a 3-1 victory against Brighton. I certainly didn't expect it. I thought West Ham could cause problems, but not to that magnitude. And Brighton now suddenly don't look as appealing, with those fixtures looking really tough up until Game Week 10. And it's a run ended by Man City in Game Week 9. So it's absolutely horrendous what Brighton now have over the next 5 to 6 game weeks. But overall, still quite happy with my defence, despite the lack of clean sheets and also missed opportunities. Compared to previous weeks, this was a much more solid display from my midfield. Bukayo Saka got an 8-pointer, he scored a penalty against Fulham, and otherwise I think he actually had quite a poor game, but he still got that goal and got an 8-pointer on the board. And I think Saka is a must-have almost, and one of the best midfielders in the game, even though Arsenal's fixtures aren't the greatest. They've got Man City, Tottenham and Man United over the next 5, and the other games also look a bit tricky. Even Everton away, it looks really easy on paper. Trust me, Arsenal always struggle at Goodison Park and haven't won there in 5 years since Arsene Wenger left the club. Martinelli also had a pretty decent performance from an XG perspective. He looked a bit more dangerous and lively, but still nowhere near to the levels we know Martinelli is capable of. And I think that's mainly down to the system that Arsenal are playing. And once things go back to normal, I think Martinelli will improve as an asset and we might regret selling him. But he is one of the first names on the chopping block for me, and it will be the same case for many of you watching this video today. As for Bruno Fernandes, he produced an amazing return of 12 points. He scored a penalty, also got an assist, and he was man of the match, and he was the catalyst of that Man United comeback. And at the moment, I have to say, he's having a good season. The returns haven't been great overall, but in Game Week 3, he obviously rounded things off in style, and I would expect some big things from him, especially when the fixtures turn for Man United around Game Week 6. And the same can definitely be said for Marcus Rashford. But having said that, I'm not too keen on a Man United offensive double-up. The same goes for an Arsenal double-up as well. And that's why I'm very keen to sell at least one of these Arsenal and Man United midfielders and have a more diverse midfield to cover different teams that way, because I'm just not too convinced about these double-ups at the moment, despite the returns in Game Week 3. As for Matoma, he's had a very good start to the season, but he blanked against West Ham. He's got some awful fixtures over the next 5 or 6, so it could be a good time to sell. And Brighton can still score in all of these games. Of course they can, but the ceiling will naturally be lower, and Matoma could produce a few more blanks than maybe you would expect. And I think there are much better alternatives. You've got Sterling, Mbeumo, Maddison, all looking like very good options over the next 5 to 10 game weeks, and that's where all of them could come into play and find a way into my team. I'm not sure about the exact statistic, but Erling Haaland was one of the most captain players in FPL history in Game Week 3. And what does he do? He misses a penalty, which would have put Man City 1-0 up. Later on, he goes on to score, but he still gets those missed penalty points out of the bonus completely and produces 4 points overall in the very end. But Erling Haaland is kind of a non-negotiable. He's owned by almost 92% of the game. It seems to go up every single time when we talk about his ownership, but there's no real alternative to him. We had Harry Kane last season. This time round, there's no forward that can really get close to his level, and even Mohamed Salah in the midfield, who's being very consistent, you still would just go for Erling Haaland, plays in a better team, better fixtures, and also has a high ceiling at this moment in time. So Erling Haaland is just a must-have, and it's going to be that way for at least the next couple of weeks, I would argue. And maybe later in the season, there could be a time where we could go without Erling Haaland, but the time is certainly not now. And despite a disappointing showing, he's still going to be in all of our FPL teams. Next up is Ollie Watkins, who has been very frustrating because Aston Villa have scored 8 times in the Premier League, and he hasn't scored a single goal. But having said that, he has produced a return in every single game week so far, with an assist in game weeks 1, 2, and 3. And in the Conference League qualifier, the first leg against Hibernian, he scored a hat-trick. So he has been very consistent this season, and I think he will tick along nicely for a very long time. So despite facing Liverpool away and a few tough fixtures here and there, I'd still be quite happy to keep Ollie Watkins, and I don't think a move from Watkins to Jackson is that optimal, and I'd rather go for Sterling in the midfield at the moment to cover Chelsea offensively. But of course, it's all relative. We've only got 3 game weeks worth of data, and things can certainly change. I still like Jackson, Wissa, and a few other forwards, but I'm still quite happy to keep Watkins and see what he can do over the next few weeks. I captain Haaland. I thought he would produce a double-digit return. I was expecting 1 to 2 goals from him. In the end, it wasn't meant to be. I got 51 points and a small green arrow from around 450k to 371. You can see my league code there on the right hand side, and it's also in the description of all of my videos, and you will see it most of the time in every single one of my streams and videos too, so you can always have an opportunity to join the FPL League. I've got 188 points and it's a decent start to the season. It could be better, and in terms of the captaincy, maybe I should have gone for Bruno Fernandes and gone for that Man United attacker that I kept on advocating for in Game Week 3. Despite a lot of people looking to sell both, I was very buoyant and bullish on keeping both, at least for 1 more week. But now comes the time for Game Week 4, and I am looking to change things up, especially in the midfield. So let's now jump straight into the team selection portion of this video, starting from the goalkeeper, and there's going to be plenty of changes in the next week. Both of my goalkeepers have a tough fixture on paper this week, and despite Turner having a better chance of a clean sheet against Chelsea away, I'd probably go for Onana for the saves and bonus points potential. I think Arsenal will have a lot of shots and cause some trouble for the Man United defence, which is going to be without Varane and Luke Shaw, not to mention other injuries to players like Mason Mount. But I think Man United will cause problems offensively, but it could be a very high-scoring game, and Onana, I think, could still get those saves and bonus points, which he has been lacking, at least in Game Weeks 2 and 3. It's not an ideal week for goalkeepers, I think, in general, but especially in my case, I'm still going to go for Onana. If you are going for Turner, that'd be interested to see your thoughts and why you would go for him. Maybe it's just a clean sheet probability, which is fair enough, but I think Chelsea will score, and I just don't really see a clean sheet for either Onana or Turner. So in the end, I'm going for the higher ceiling, the saves and bonus points, and I still think Onana has that advantage over the American. The transfer I made in Game Week 2 of Rico Henry in for Tyrone Mings is now finally going to pay off in a way, because I'm going to start him for the first time this season. He's facing Bournemouth at home. Last season it was a 2-0 win for Brentford over the Cherries at home, and it could be a bit of a difficult game there for Brentford, more difficult than we anticipate, but you would still give Brentford the edge, and it could be a fascinating game. I think it could be high scoring potentially. I'm kind of hoping it isn't in a way. Hopefully Brentford can keep the clean sheet, score a couple of goals themselves, and that would probably be a great way to start things off in Game Week 4. Then you look at the rest of the defence. Ben Chilwell at home to Nottingham Forest. I actually think Forest will score. They were knocked out of the Carabao Cup against Burnley at home, whilst Chelsea beat Wimbledon 2-1, but they were struggling in that game, and I'm still not fully convinced about Chelsea. I have to say that. I'm not looking to triple up on them anytime soon, despite them having great fixtures over the next 5 game weeks, and in terms of the FDR, they are in the top 2 for the best fixtures alongside Luton Town. But having said all that, I'm still not fully convinced about Chelsea, but I am convinced about Chilwell. I think he's one of the best defenders in FPL right now. And the last defender is Pervis Estupiñán facing Newcastle at home. And I believe this result was 0-0 last time, and I wouldn't mind that at all, especially for those of you looking to sell Brighton midfielders or attackers, Joao Pedro, Mitoma, Solimarch, etc. And if you are keeping Estupiñán, a 0-0 draw could certainly be an ideal result this week. But I'm expecting goals in this game, possibly a 1-1 or 2-2 draw, and that means no clean sheet for Estupiñán, and then you would be relying on attacking returns, either an assist or a goal, and then maybe the Ecuadorian could enter the bonus points. So Onana and Estupiñán don't have good fixtures by any stretch of the imagination, and you're probably heavily relying on Rico Henry and Chilwell to produce the returns. One transfer I could be looking to make is Mbeumo in for Mitoma, and he is facing Bournemouth at home. He's got some good fixtures up until Game Week 10, and despite some difficult ones in there, like Newcastle away in Game Week 5, I still think Mbeumo can return in such games. He's on penalties, he's amassed the highest XG of any player so far this season, and whilst that is certainly swayed by the penalties he's gotten, he still has been very impressive from open play, and Brentford offensively, especially Mbeumo and Wissa, have been thoroughly impressive. So Mbeumo could be a very likely transfer in, despite a lot of other midfielders getting the limelight at the moment. I am going to keep Bukayo Saka. There's no question about it. Let's put it that way. He's facing Man United. He's actually got a good record against the Red Devils. I believe he's scored in the last 3 or 4 consecutive games against them, and he's on penalties. Of course, that could be shared with Odegaard from time to time, but with Saka, he's still doing very well, despite not having the greatest start to the season in terms of overall performances. Now, another transfer I could be looking to make is Raheem Sterling in because of the next 5 fixtures. I'm not too sure about him in the long term, but if I'm looking to wildcard potentially around Game Week 8, it doesn't really matter, and Sterling is a great midfielder purchase for the next 5. He's actually got a very good record against Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, his 2 next opponents. Bournemouth is his favourite opponent in general. He scored the most goals against them compared to any other club, and as for Nottingham Forest, he scored a brace against them last season at home and also a goal at the City ground. And with that 19-pointer in Game Week 3, an impressive performance in Game Week 2, it's still a good time to jump on. And if you were to go for one Chelsea attacker at the moment, it has to be Raheem Sterling. Another transfer I could make, and this could make part of the -4, is James Maddison. And in terms of these midfielder transfers ranked of Maddison, Sterling and Mbeumo, I would put Maddison number 1, even over Raheem Sterling, because in terms of overall performances from Game Week 1, I've been thoroughly impressed by Maddison. Everything that Spurs do offensively goes through Maddison, and he played a bit of a deeper role against Bournemouth to construct the play from a deeper position, and he still produced a return and was looking very lively from an FPL perspective. He's got some great fixtures over the next two, facing Burnley away and Sheffield United at home, so that does overshadow the more difficult fixtures against Arsenal and Liverpool straight after, and the games afterwards are still very impressive for Tottenham Hotspur. And you always have these doubts about Tottenham. You know, they can look very impressive and then be very disappointing in games you expect them to win, but with James Maddison, I don't have those concerns, and having one Tottenham player at the very least is definitely a recommendation I would make, especially in the offensive areas, and James Maddison is by far the best asset that Spurs have to offer at the moment, even over Heung-min Son and Richarlison, who scored his first goal in quite a while against Fulham in the Carabao Cup. The final midfielder would be Bruno Fernandes. If I had to keep one Man United midfielder right now, I am leaning towards Bruno Fernandes and selling Marcus Rashford. Just bear in mind that the fixtures turn for Man United very soon. Rashford scored at the Emirates last season as well. And against Brighton, both Bruno and Rashford have a good record against the Seagulls. So it's going to be a difficult one. And you might be frustrated if you decide to sell Martinelli and Rashford, because they can still do extremely well. Even Matoma with the difficult fixtures is a good FPL asset. But if I were to take a -4 hit this week, I think I would make wholesale changes to the midfield, get rid of 3 of them, and bring in Mbeumo, Sterling, and James Maddison. The front two will be unsurprising to those of you who watch all of my team selection videos. Erling Haaland at home to Fulham. Don't get rid of him, of course. I mean, what else can we say about him? He's probably going to be most of our captains yet again, and I do want to go against him. And when you look at the rest, Mbeumo, Sterling, even Maddison potentially could be decent options, and I'm very, very tempted by an Mbeumo or Sterling to rival the Erling Haaland captaincy. And the one kind of pro argument to going against Haaland captain is that Paulinho is back and he makes a big difference to Fulham. Having said that, Fulham still concede so many chances. Against Arsenal, their XGC was actually over 3. Against Everton, it was almost 3. And against Brentford, they got absolutely battered, and Brentford could have scored even more goals. So Fulham haven't been that impressive this season. They were maybe a bit fortunate to get the result against Arsenal too, but Man City, I'd probably expect them to win by 3 or 4, and that's why a lot of us will still gravitate towards the Erling Haaland captaincy. The final player will be Ollie Watkins facing Liverpool away, and I think that fixture alone would put people off and they might sell him to a Jackson or a Wissa, and that's fair enough when you base it off the fixtures. But I think Watkins will be more consistent, and against Liverpool, why can't Watkins or Diaby produce returns? I think Liverpool will be quite open defensively despite a very good performance against Newcastle in Game Week 3, and I think that could be quite an open and exciting games with both teams potentially scoring, and I'm quite happy to start Watkins and give him a chance to finally score in the Premier League this season. And let's not forget, he hasn't blanked so far. It's just been a bit disappointing because Aston Villa have scored so many goals and Watkins has only managed to get 3 assists, but he is still a good asset. I'd recommend him in the long term. If I was wildcarding, of course, it's a bit different, but for those of you who have Ollie Watkins, I would definitely recommend keeping him if you can. The bench is looking decent this week with Turner in goal. I've got Baldock first sub, Saliba second, and Osula completing the bench. I actually would go for Baldock over Saliba. The only thing is that Baldock is linked with a move away to AEK Athens, but apparently Sheffield United have rejected the offer, so let's keep an eye on the developments there. But Sheffield United at home to Everton, there is a decent chance of a clean sheet. However, Everton have amassed an XG of over 5, and they haven't scored a single goal yet, and I think the time will come for them to eventually score some goals. So if it's not against Sheffield United here in Game Week 4, it probably will be against Arsenal in Game Week 5, but it's a tricky one, and I would actually even consider starting Baldock over Stupinian purely for the fixture. I'm not thoroughly impressed by Sheffield United, but defensively they haven't been that bad, and they put up a good fight against Man City. Now all that's left really to discuss is the captaincy. And yes, I'm currently going for Erling Haaland. It's boring, I know it is. But if I were to bring in Mbeumo, Sterling and Maddison for a -4 hit, I think the alternatives in Sterling and Mbeumo could seriously rival Haaland for the captaincy. And just to be a bit different, because I'm a bit sick of captaining Haaland all the time, I might go a bit different and go for Sterling or Mbeumo. go for that higher ceiling potentially. I just have to say, though, I think Man City will win by 3 or 4 against Fulham and Haaland will score. But then again, it's good to be different. And those that captained Sterling last week definitely bore the fruit of that and enjoyed a very good score potentially. But that is my squad for Game Week 4 with the provisional transfers. If I decide not to take a -4 hit, then one of Mbeumo, Sterling or Maddison won't come in. And I'd probably keep Marcus Rashford and go for that double up in Man United attack still, which isn't ideal, but that is, of course, the alternative. What do you prefer? This -4 hit, getting Mbeumo, Sterling and Maddison, or just sticking with 2 free transfers and keeping someone like Rashford or Martinelli in my ranks? I'd be very interested to see your thoughts, maybe even think Mitoma worth keeping. Let's now go to Drafthound and fpl.team to talk about some other aspects of the game that I want to briefly discuss, the algorithms, what they recommend in terms of my transfers, and also my Game Week 5 lineup with these provisional transfers of Mbeumo, Sterling and Maddison. There is a link in the description below to join Drafthound. I'd thoroughly recommend it. And I'll also put a link in the comment section so it's very easy for you to get to. And in terms of the suggested transfers, Martinelli and Fernandes out for Sterling and Foden. So it kind of has the same idea as me to get rid of Martinelli and a Man United midfielder. Just maybe the wrong one potentially. Bruno Fernandes or Rashford, that's definitely a debate to be had. And then bringing in Sterling, I'm quite on board with that. Even Phil Foden, I still like, but I've just got a bad history with Phil Foden, and I'm quite happy just having one Man City player for the time being. And if I were to add another one to my ranks, it probably would be a defender. And that's another difficult decision to make because Man City defenders are also not exempt from Pep Roulette. And in terms of the captaincy, it does favour Erling Haaland. But here we go. The optimised team, it will make these kind of changes automatically. Chilwell is suggested as the vice-captain. It puts Rico Henry in, Saliba first sub, Baldock second, and Osula third. So that's mainly the key difference, I think, from my team with this team selection. And let's actually use this transfer and optimised tool. And there you go. Sterling becomes the vice-captain. A 3-5-2 formation. Double up in Man City attack against Fulham. And it's actually looking pretty solid. I'm just not too sure about Mitoma against Newcastle. But it's a very solid squad recommended by Drafthound. And in terms of expected points, it has gone up now to 67.8. And average ownership is still quite high with 32%. So maybe I need to play a bit more aggressive, be a bit different, because otherwise it's just a bit boring if everyone has the same teams and the same players. But there you go. Maybe one day I will become much more interesting to watch in terms of being more aggressive and making some more exciting moves. Let's now go on to fpl.team and show you my starting 11 in Game Week 5, assuming I do make those free transfers that I mentioned in the midfield and take that -4 hit in Game Week 4. Team looks even better on paper in Game Week 5 with Onana facing Brighton at home, a back three of Saliba, Chilwell and Gvardiol, who could be a transfer in, getting that Man City defender and bolstering the squad depth, so it'd be Baldock out for Gvardiol. By the way, that is definitely not set in stone because I haven't even made the transfers for Game Week 4 yet. So let's not get too carried away in terms of what I'm going to do in Game Week 5. It's just a provisional transfer and an idea that I might build upon in next week's team selection video. The midfield 5 would be kind of the same every single week with these free transfers. So Saka, Fernandes, Sterling, Maddison and Mbeumo, and then Haaland and Watkins up front. And the bench is also fairly solid with Estupiñán and Henry being there. And arguably they could even start because they're still great FPL assets, especially in the case of Pervis Estupiñán. In terms of the captaincy, in Game Week 5, I would be looking between Haaland, Maddison and Sterling. But even Bruno Fernandes, who has a terrific record against Brighton, cannot be underestimated, and he could do a very good job in Game Week 5. But of course, that's looking a bit further ahead. It's just having a good idea of what you could potentially do in future game weeks. So one very likely set of transfers I could make is take a -4 hit for 3 midfielders in Game Week 4, and then in Game Week 5, look to get a Man City defender in. And after that, we can start reassessing and maybe roll the transfer around Game Week 6. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which transfers are you looking to make this week? And also in the weeks to come, let me know your thoughts. And it's very, very advisable to check sites like fpl.team, see your team in future game weeks. And even with Drafthound, I believe they're going to add a feature very soon where you can check your team in future weeks and start playing around with transfers, chip strategies, and much more. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and I'd encourage you to check all the links in the description description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and also Drafthound. We're trying to reach new milestones in every single one of those categories. So in the Discord server, we're trying to get to 1,000 members. On Twitter, we're close to 2,000 followers. And on Instagram, we're on the road towards 2,000 followers too. So there's a lot of milestones to reach and a lot of goals to achieve. And it's all thanks to all of you. Thank you very much to the subscribers, patrons, and channel members. You deserve a massive shout out for all the support you give to this channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 4. I hope you enjoy the rest of the football, and I'll see you next time.